Instagram. We are live on Facebook. We are live also on YouTube at BEM Hub. Tonight we are hoping to just have a great conversation with my longtime friend Daniellia A. White. I'm just gonna give some more persons a little bit more time to come on in. Feel free to ask your questions in the comment, guys. We don't just want to be talking heads here tonight, so you can ask some questions. Um, we'll be talking about what's it like to live with sickle cell and navigating the career life. So thank you guys for joining us. I'm just gonna give another minute for some more persons to join us, and then we'll just jump right into the conversation. Don't forget, guys, that you can like, you can share. Um, we would like to get this broadcast to as many persons as possible. All right, guys. So if you're on the live, just share the live on Instagram. Just share it to the different chats. We'd appreciate that. All right. All right. So, Anelia, good night. It's been a minute since we have done any face-to-face conversation like this because we have been busy just living our lives and just trying to get through the type of jobs that we do. You and I, we go far back
Way
as
back.
far back as Excelsior Community College, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I have known you for a while, and I would have seen the evolution of you as an individual and also as a brand. But for the persons who are not familiar with who you are, I'm just gonna ask you just to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and that you live with sickle cell and the type of sickle cell that you live
Okay, so I'll start at the top. My name is Daniellia A. White, as Noel said. Thanks for having me, by the way. I have sickle cell HBSS, and I'm an entertainment executive, talent manager, brand manager, or published author. I have so many portfolios that sometimes it's hard to keep track, but all in all, entertainment executive.
with. Yeah, that's good. Well, Daniela, you and I, we've always had this conversation to say that, the topic sickle cell, sometimes it comes around like twice a year for an extended period in September and once in the month of June on June 19th.
Yeah.
And there, there, there's no way to exhaust the topic of sickle cell because there are so many different avenues that you can talk about sickle cell from. And our issue is that there's a lot of talking, but sometimes there's not a lot of movement that is done where the illness is concerned. So
Yeah.
yes, we know what it's like to live with the disease. We know what the struggles are. But in terms of to really get it moving and get more persons to make better policies for persons living with sickle cell, that is where the lull is. So tonight we just want to talk about what's it like to live, as persons. We have a career in a similar field, and that's the field of media.
Yeah.
And I want to just ask you the first question. Um, what's it like living with sickle cell? So let's just talk to our viewers from a childhood coming up, what it was like living with sickle cell.
Uh, well, I think living with sickle cell disease, I didn't realize that I was abnormal, if I'm to say that, because there there wasn't I wasn't treated differently in my house. So if I'm to be honest, growing up being around my family, I wasn't treated differently. It wasn't until high school that it became a huge thing. So even in prep school, it never struck me as abnormal or something that everybody, like there was no big deal
Mm-hmm.
surrounding sickle cell. I think the big deal for me started in high school, as I said, and that's because I had a very enlarged spleen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd get teased for that. I was extremely jaundiced, of course, because my spleen is swollen. So there are a lot of side effects to that. And so high school wasn't very fun. I got questions that I've never been asked and got teased in a way that I wasn't used to. So that was a whole new ball game. But on outside of that, living with sickle cell disease, uh, it has its very good days and it has days where you're wondering if you're gonna make it through the end of the day.
Yeah.
Um, there are also moments that start out being good, and in the blink of an eye, you are fighting for your life, literally. So it's a by the minute, by the second, by the hour kind of thing. You don't necessarily know what the next hour is gonna bring, but it has been a roller coaster ride, a chronic roller coaster ride.
Yeah, when you say it like that, I think sometimes because we as people we don't understand pain. Pain is not something that can be seen. When you hear someone talking about it being a roller coaster or it being something that you don't know what's gonna happen the next minute, it's sometimes it's lost in translation. It's not like when someone gets a cut and you can see that they're bleeding and you say, all right, we need to stop the bleeding
Yeah,
from happening. It's not like that. So I recognize that our nation, in and of itself, we don't understand pain. There's an apathy for where pain is concerned. So if someone else say, "Oh, I'm having a headache," and we say, "Oh, yeah, man, just take two Excedrin for it," versus when someone with sickle cell say, "I'm having a crisis," "Oh, maybe you can take two Panadol," not recognizing that this is on a different pain scale. And I found this out for myself, not necessarily in primary school, but in high school, when I remember just sitting in an accounts class. And I remember saying to the accounting teacher at the time that I'm having a crisis, and she sent me to the nurse. And when I went to the nurse was saying, "You probably need to call someone." I already knew that I needed to call someone, and she was saying, "Do you want to take two Panadol in the meantime?" And I was, "That's not going to do anything." And I think that was one of the culture shock for my batchmates, because when they saw an ambulance coming for me at school, that is when they were like, wait, something is really going on, because they did not understand that someone could be in pain, and the amount of pain um, is the reason why they are now going to the hospital. So for
yeah,
me, as you say, you weren't treated differently by your family because they knew. And in many cases, the issue is not with your family members, nor with your
yeah,
immediate circle. It's with the HR managers. It's with say for instance the PE teacher, because I know I couldn't do PE, I couldn't play football. It's with the lack of understanding where friends are concerned, because they don't know what is going on. So I find that that's the issue. And then many persons don't realize that sickle cell is one of those variable diseases where it doesn't affect everybody the same way.
yeah,
So one of the things I hear someone says that how can someone who is on the plumpier side have sickle cell versus I know everyone with sickle cell being on the skinnier side or the smaller, more petite side. So as we go through tonight's conversation, we just want to navigate some of these misconceptions and just to talk about if you had to navigate any of these in your personal life. And by personal life, I mean like your work life. So I guess the second question I want to ask you is, did living with sickle cell affect like your career choices?
yes and no. So I say yes and no because I started out, well, a lot of people don't know this, but I started out in dentistry.
Mm,
Um, Dentistry is just as rigid as doing medicine. It's just a specialist type of medicine. So I'd have long hours for school. We'd have practical almost every day. I remember going to school very early in the morning and not leaving until night drop.
mm-hmm,
I would be able to do that. because I realize while stress is a trigger for me, it's the type of stress.
Mm-hmm.
So it has nothing to do with physically being unable to do it. It's more when I'm mentally stressed. So when I'm
Yep.
mentally stressed, things go AWOL. But physically, I can handle stress. So that was not difficult for me and it was not a problem for me to do. But then, no, because I didn't spend a lot of time in dentistry. There was no real life experience spent in dentistry. But I do spend a lot of time in entertainment. And spending a lot of time in entertainment, I spend a lot of time on my legs because we have events, and when events are being held, I can't exactly walk around with a crutch. I don't exactly walk around or ride around in a wheelchair or have a electric cart or anything. I walk the field like every other entertainment executive. And if it is that the night goes from 4 p.m. call time all the way back to 1 a.m., I'm on my feet for as long as possible. So physically, I don't have a challenge. I think the challenge is when I know that I am not well and
Mm-hmm.
I have to adjust and have everybody around me also has to adjust to making sure that I'm still in the loop while picking up the slacks because it affects everybody. When I get sick, the whole chain is affected. So
Mm.
that is probably the yes and no part of it because people would think that it's a physical aspect. It's actually not.
Wow, wow, wow. A note that you said a while ago that when you get sick, the whole chain gets affected. Um, and I just want to backtrack a little bit for you to just, if you could just expound a little bit more for our listeners, how those or when like when you get sick, how much it affects like the team in terms of like the psychosocial, the movement of the everyday activity. Just to give us a little bit more.
All right. So I think a better way to explain it is to give an example.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, this week I had an accident and I'm talking about it now because it's past or passing. But this week, I remember 1 minute as I woke up the morning and I remember having muscle spasm. Now, most mornings I wake up, I have to lay a little bit or sit a little bit before I
Mm-hmm.
get off my bed. So I start working every day at 7 a.m. It doesn't change no matter the day. I start every day at 7 a.m. Now, in order to start every day at 7 a.m., some persons can wake up at 6:45 and just get into it. I have to wake up at 6 because my body needs to come off of the spasm. I need to make sure that the temperature of the room doesn't change drastically because the temperature of the room can trigger me into a crisis unnecessarily. So that morning, I woke up a little bit later. I think I woke up about 6:30, and it threw my morning off.
Mm-hmm.
So 6:30 no doesn't give me a lot of time to get ready to thaw out, and I'm gonna put thaw out in quotations,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't give me a lot of time to do all of that. So I remember before I left the house, I was having a muscle spasm, but I wear socks and shoes to work. So I
Mm-hmm.
put on my socks and I put on my shoes and I said, okay, fine, it should be fine by the time I get to work. And I thought I was fine by the time I got to work. However, I got out with my bags and I remember somebody stopped me and we were having a conversation. And in the middle of the conversation, my leg went numb. So imagine me now on a step or on the sidewalk. My leg is now numb and I'm stepping off, but my leg is numb. So I can't tell you if I completely come off the step or not.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, I didn't completely come off the steps. I ring my foot, and before I know it, my leg is the size of a potato. We're really not a potato, more a pumpkin. Um, yes, because I nearly broke my foot, literally, because the 6:30 threw my day off. Now, because it threw my day off, the type of job I do requires me to use my legs. I say all of that to say, yesterday I could not leave my desk. So I did everything I had to do by calling people. I had to call them, they had to come to me. So instead of me getting up to go to them to give them documents and all of those things, I had to literally be using text messages to each colleague. So they had to leave their desk to come to me, which is usually not what happens. On another fold, today I had to stay home because my leg literally went from 0 to 100. Like from my knee go right down is swollen, and all I did was wring my ankle, and it seemed normal to everybody else. But wringing my ankle creates more problem for us. We know how it go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so now I have a talent who needs to get to a radio station
Uh-huh.
tomorrow morning at a very early time. But I also have to consider the fact that this radio station has a lot of steps.
Yeah.
Because I injured my leg, I am not going to put my body under the stress of climbing up and down those steps because I know I cannot physically do it.
Wow.
So she's now booked for a radio station, and I have to find someone to replace me in going with her. Because usually, once she's booked, the first person that goes with her is me. It's automatic. But if I'm injured, I now have to take time out of somebody else's job or schedule to say, hey, I need you to accompany this talent because I physically am not able to. So that's what I mean when I say the whole chain is affected.
And
And
and,
the
and no, go ahead. Finish the point.
and sometimes it gets worse because I've had to execute events from a hospital bed. People don't know these things, but everybody else is in the hospital and sleeping probably, and I'm hooked up on drip and drugs and all of these things, and I have a full working station. I have a laptop up, I have 3 phones, and I'm still doing my work, but I can't physically do it, so I have to get other manpower to do what I should physically be doing. So that's what I mean when I say the chain is affected.
I'm happy that you were very vivid in terms of how you said it, because I don't think I could say it any better. I think all I could do is just to add to it now. Because one of the things I recognize that people don't understand, and unless you're close to someone that lives with the illness, you don't understand when we say it goes from 0 to 100 real quick. So you rightly said it. You got up and you're having a good day, but one, I'm going to term it one wrong move, and
Yeah,
that wrong move cannot just offset your day, but offset other person's life. And sometimes it is in not just the entertainment, but in your work life that is it's thrown off. So say for instance, you have someone that works in corporate world, and the account needs to be, and I'm using examples here, but there's an account that needs to be done, audited, an account that needs where we just need something to be done with the account. We need to
or a
set
report
stuff,
needs to be
or a
handed
report,
in.
yeah, and you are the main person on that report, and because of what's going on with you that day, it throws off what's going on in the organization. And sometimes this is what HR uses to say, boy, this person is not good for productivity because they were sick, this report is behind, and then bosses above us, they are handing down a little bit of pressure. But just to come back to the point where you talk about just handling talents, you run an organization that I know that you built it from the ground up. Yes, you had other supports, but
Yeah,
you are the main person in the backbone of the organization that you are leading. And one of the things, as you rightly said, is that if something goes wrong with you, it affects the different parts. Now, I remember when we were doing the documentary, and I think you also remember Beverly. Beverly
yeah,
was one of those persons who, when she was younger, she didn't even get to finish school because she got a leg ulcer. She
yeah.
went to school and someone hit her with a stone, and her feet got swollen, and they started teasing her. But if we were to bring this, like say she was an older person now, We wouldn't want to see someone coming to work with a leg ulcer, and it can affect their working life, and then because they can't work, they can't buy the medication. Because they can't buy the medication, they're in a constant state of the pain just keeps going on and on. So I'm grateful that you painted that picture. So just want to reach back out to the persons who are watching live. We are live on Instagram. We're also live on Facebook and on YouTube. Feel free, guys, to send your questions. We can read them and we can talk about them over the live. But one of the other things I want us to look at, Daniela, is just the whole aspect of trying to navigate the stigmas from other persons, because it's not from the people that you're working with that they are now capable of handling it. They know what your pain protocol is. They know that if you get in a crisis, what to do. How do you navigate, like, when persons think that you can't get the job done because you have sickle cell, if you ever encounter anyone like that?
Oh, I've had so many stories like that, and I don't think I know anybody with sickle cell disease who doesn't have a story like that. Um, I can speak to a specific incident that happened when I worked at the bank. And I remember that incident taught me that when I go into interviews, it's something I say now right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
If I get the response in the interview, I'm no longer interested in the job.
Yeah.
Because I remember that bank incident, everybody knows if you work in a bank, the system is you're on your feet a lot. You are there from very early, leave very late after the bank is closed. But that wasn't the issue for me. The issue was the temperature in the room. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember I'd talk about it consistently. I'd be in the room and my desk was literally under the AC. And I kept saying to them, and it's not that I don't have a jacket, I have a jacket, but if the room is very cold, I have to now think about my lower extremities, my arms, if my body is feeling it. I literally am cold until my stomach is trembling. You know that feeling you get when your stomach
Yeah,
trembling
yeah,
because you're
yeah,
extremely cold.
yeah.
And I remember saying it to my supervisor at the time, and it was a brush off. And that ended up with me having a chest infection. And dealing with the chest infection, came to work just the same and not trying to make anybody uncomfortable. So instead, I decided to layer up. Like a fully gone winter time now because clearly nobody not listening to me. And to complicate the situation, they have very heavy cabinet drawers. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember I'd get tasks. And I think because I started complaining about the AC, nobody can convince me that it wasn't deliberate. Instead of
Wow.
saying to me, Danny, I need you to go to the cabinet to take all of these files out, what they would do is tell me one. So I'm going into the file room, and the file room is a whole different temperature on top of that. I'm going in there one at a time, climbing up on stuff, lifting up heavy drawers. Remember, I already have a chest infection. I'm already extremely cold. And now I have to lift heavy things on top of it. And I remember I ended up really sick, really, really sick, hospital and everything. Daddy had to pick me up from the bank that day. And I had an aunt who worked in the director position. So she's on the board for the bank. And when she found out
Mm-hmm.
that I ended up in the hospital, she was kind of trying to figure out what happened because you don't just end up in the hospital. Like you come work okay and end up in the hospital from work. And so when I started explaining it to her, which I felt a little bit cute talking about it because I knew that when I started complaining before, the attitude or the response that I got from the chest infection time, that response made me feel cute in telling my own aunt that this is what happened. I
Yeah.
started explaining it to her. When I went back to work, the manager basically was telling me that is my fault and I never tell nobody that I have sickle cell. And I'm like, it's in my file. It's in my file. And even so, I came directly to you and explained it to you. And so there are times when I'm working in spaces and the response of persons when they find out you have sickle cell is almost cold. Not even
Yeah,
almost. It's cold.
it
It's
is. It is.
cold, and they low key discriminate against you. They're not saying it and they're not doing it out loud and in your face, but it happens. And so what I've done for myself is I have decided what spaces I'm going to allow myself or subject myself to. I am no longer afraid to pack up my things and leave because I am the one who have to pay for that hospital bill. Every time you send me to the hospital is my bill. You're not going to help me pay it. So I will get up, I will pack up and leave. I am good with packing up. And if I don't feel well that morning, I don't care what you have to say. If I tell you that I'm not coming to work, that's it. I'm not coming to work. And I still, to this moment, have a 7 to 3, which technically is a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But I still have a full time job. And what I appreciate about this full time job is that persons want to learn. And because they want to learn and they are careful about how they want to learn, they will ask you the questions. It makes it easier for me to say, I can tolerate this, I can't tolerate this. Sometimes something as simple as the AC. I'm not the one sitting under the AC, but she will ask me every now and again, you Danny, you good? Are you hot? Because a lot of people talk about the cold, but don't
Mm-hmm.
realize that if we're extremely hot, it causes a problem as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the temperature in the room is an easy fix because people actually want to learn and they care. So having experienced two sides of it, trust me, I think I'm at the better place of the two. And yeah, it's not very easy navigating the space, especially when people do not. Ignorance is bliss, but ignorance is also what kills us a lot of the times. And
Yeah.
that ignorance is why we get treated the way we do and why persons don't think that the statements that we make or the complaints that we make
Are
are
valid.
really worth, yeah, they don't think it's valid. And just so people can get a vivid picture, having a chest infection for us is already painful. My entire chest wall is painful. Think about me taking a hammer and beating you in your foot, in your hand, in your chest, literally. And so on top of that, to be lifting up 100 pound or a 20 pound bag of rice on top of that, it's not easy. And so when I say I'm in pain and you ask me on a scale of 1 to 10, I go through a pain level of 10 with a headache. And for you, a headache is oh, let's take 2 Panadol and call it a day. I can never go to the pharmacy and take any over the counter drug
Yeah.
because it makes no sense. It's a waste of money, waste of time. So if we're thinking about pain in a vacuum or in a descriptive way, when I tell you that I'm in pain, think about me taking a hammer and slamming it against anywhere in your body that hurts. Yeah, that's as descriptive as we can get.
And with that said, um, I want to join you when you said that you were working in a financial institution and the coolness. And I think I don't know, there's just this thing in Jamaica where there's this necessity for work environment to feel like it's a New York afternoon. I can't understand why, but for
Yeah.
persons who live in a tropical climate, we want the place to be cold. And yes, they would say take your sweaters with you and all that. But what they don't understand is this. If I get cold, it means that I'm not drinking water. And if I don't drink water, I'm becoming dehydrated. And the AC in and of itself is pulling the water outside of my body. So this is now risking that I'm about to have a crisis. And I think you would have heard of, well, you must have seen my Twitter thread where last year I was doing a job at a financial institution. Mind you, they handle it a little bit better than most workplaces that I've gone to. But I remember like the first week of just going in for training, and it was cold. And one day I remember just going into the office and I felt that little tingling. You know that tingling, you feel that there's a crisis about to happen. And I was just
Yeah.
there trying to hydrate. I was chewing down into the Panadine, um, trying to ensure that I don't have to go home. But by the time I got home, I literally dropped my bag and I said, I'm going to the emergency room. That's how bad it gets when you have an environment that just the cold throws you off, or even the fact that even earlier this summer, the heat really has me feeling a lot more pain because now you realize that you have to be drinking a lot more water.
Yeah.
The nights are not getting cool by 8 o'clock. Last night up to 12 o'clock, my room was still hot. So the extremities of the heat, meaning cold or the warm weather, it doesn't work for us, and sometimes persons will use that against us in our career field, because I know there are many persons who they live with sickle cell, but because they want the employment, because they don't have the means, they will sometimes deny telling HR that, hey, I live with this thing, because sometimes when they're very honest about it, HR would be like, well, you weren't shortlisted. We've decided to go with another candidate. But on paper, they were the better candidate. But HR, because they don't want to deal with the fact that this person may get sick very often,
And
or the fact that insurance, persons living with sickle cell don't have insurance.
as well as let's also talk about the fact that the reason a lot of persons shy away from even hiring persons with sickle cell disease
Mm-hmm.
has nothing to do with the person themselves, but
Yeah.
what they think sickle cell disease comes with. It
Amen.
comes with more risks. It comes with um, what they would think is not even beneficial to the economic structure of the business. Because if you think about it, when you think about an extreme case, we are living with a chronic disease, and a
Mm-hmm.
chronic disease means I feel pain almost every day of my life. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Some persons can function with the pain, but there are times when our pain gets to a level that is non functional, and that's
Yeah.
when it becomes a crisis. Now, people don't understand why we call it a crisis. If you think about the earthquake that happens sometimes, that's a crisis that we need to, when it go past a certain level, a earthquake becomes a crisis, a natural crisis. For us, when the pain gets too high or gets too intense, let's call it intense, it becomes an issue of crisis. Now, what I find a lot of employers don't take the time out to do, and I don't think it's natural either, so I'm not saying there's a blame game,
Mm-hmm.
but I know a lot of them don't take the time out to actually understand what triggers a crisis. Because if you understood what triggers a crisis, then you would understand how to fix the environment in a way that benefits you hiring somebody with sickle cell disease.
Mm-hmm.
But let's also look at Jamaica's culture. Jamaica is not cultured to hire persons with disabilities.
Mm.
And if we're really being honest about it, sickle cell is a disability.
Yeah.
On the charts in every other international region, sickle cell is listed as a disability. Now, when you think about a dwarf, you don't see a dwarf in a bank. You don't see a man with an amputee. You don't see an amputee naturally in a bank, because our economic system is not cultured in a way where they embrace disability. This is not US, where US, if you have a disability, you can still go to work. The man when I have no hand, it's rare to see them in corporate. It's rare. And so if we think about it, um, on the way they grasp the level of disability,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where you don't even have ramps. A lot of places are steps. They don't have the ability to put ramps at the door. That seems natural, but it isn't. And so I think the bigger picture for us, whilst we talk about sickle cell, is just the culture that Jamaica has to not understand that each situation or each disease, each chronic illness has to be addressed so that the environment can be a holistic one. And that will sometimes eradicate us feeling like we're stigmatized. But the issue is really not us. Sometimes we not have nothing to do with it. Sometimes they're just not prepared. I'm not prepared to even say, oh, can the AC even turn down? The AC in this room can turn down and the next room is not affected. Them don't know because they've never tried it. And so we continually get the short end of the stick because people are just simply ignorant and unprepared.
And as you rightly said that, many times the perception is what sickle cell come with, because it goes back to the fact of what we've been saying for years. There's this constant talk, well, not constant, there's this twice a year, every year conversation, but after the time has passed, nothing is really done. Um, I remember there was a year when the Sickle Cell Support Foundation, they lobbied for some pamphlets or some booklets to be created to give to Ministry of Health as a teacher's guide to help teachers understand students that were living with the illness. I'm not sure what happened to that campaign. I'm not sure how far that campaign went, because we are not at the place where we want to take sickle cell seriously. We're not at the place where and I don't want to take it from like a cancer, because cancer is one of those big diseases also. But just imagine if there were more persons lobbying for what happens with sickle cell, because this is a blood disease. You are born with it from birth. All the complications start at birth. It's not something that it comes on later on in life. You have to deal with it from birth. And for me, I'm just at a place where I just have to now say that I think the issue is not enough persons are continuing to talk about it. I want to take a question from one of our viewers here, and
Yeah.
the person says, "Hey, Jermaine here. My question is, what motivates you to push beyond your challenges?" I'll just let you take that one, Daniela.
Uh, I think because I think of my life as a purpose, I think I am purpose to be here.
Mm-hmm.
That drives me. So even when I am not well, I'm alive, and because I'm alive, I think I have purpose in being alive, if that makes sense. So it drives me every day knowing that I was made for something. I was created with a purpose. I was created on this planet. Like my gift, genuinely, I believe that what I'm doing, entertainment, is something that I'm gifted for. I believe that
Mm-hmm.
when I wake up in the morning and I smell outside, I didn't have to make it through the night. And there are so many times when we have met death. We know what death feel like. So for us to get the opportunity to do another day, I believe in carpe diem. I believe in pushing past what I'm feeling. I believe in driving for something. And so that keeps me going. It honestly keeps me going to know that for us, life is 0 to 100.
Yeah.
No minute is alike. No hour is alike. I can be quite fine right now on this live, and when I get off this live, I'm not okay. And so every minute that I am okay makes me want to do more.
Well.
Whether that more means, whether that more means managing a talent, whether that more means advocating for somebody with sickle cell, whatever that more means, it keeps me going.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned advocacy a while ago, and I want to take us there, because you are one of the persons who
Wait, hold
were
on, sorry.
utilizing. Uh-huh.
I don't mean to cut you. You spoke about something before the question,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to add to that because I think one of the biggest challenge that we find that I have found with sickle cell disease, and especially where we are as a nation, because we're speaking specifically to Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that sickle cell disease is the advocacy in other places is much better. But if we're talking specifically to Jamaica, I think one of the biggest challenge is persons every person knows somebody with the disease,
Yeah.
but not every person understand the
Understand.
disease.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we talk a lot, but I think we keep talking to the same people in the same rooms. The conversation happen in the same way. And in order for us to get a wider spread, we have to have the conversations in other rooms. And I'm not saying that handing out a pamphlet is not a good suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
But if we started making soldiers, if you think about it like a soldier system, so I will teach persons with sickle cell disease how to advocate for themselves. If we learn how to advocate for ourselves first, then each child that attends a school can give each teacher a pamphlet. We don't need Ministry of Health for that. We don't need Ministry of Education for that because we have to get smart. Ministry of Health is going to push their own agenda. How about we push ours? So every person, we teach the parents, we teach the children. They go into the schools and they say, okay, here what? And the reason I would suggest that is because that's what I used to do. When I was at Arden, which was one of my most challenging school experiences, my parents would literally collect the pamphlets from the sickle cell unit and
Mm-hmm.
every teacher would get it. I remember I had a crisis at school and I was in the science class, not my form room. And he knew that the next step was that I needed to get a nurse, I needed to get a certain and he stayed with me in the nurse's station. And when the nurse decides that she give me Panadol, him say Panadol cannot work. And he said, no, I know that it doesn't make sense to you, but you have to trust that she knows what she's telling you. Just try what she's telling you, and if it doesn't work, then we call our parents and call it a day. And that science teacher could advocate for me because he got a pamphlet directly from me. And so sometimes I think we think about it in such a complex way, but it doesn't need to be that complex. We need to learn how to advocate for ourselves. So now we can go to advocacy.
So right before I got to advocacy, because I wanted to do advocacy, then come to this. But since you preempted where I was going, as a matter of fact, I'd allow you to go to advocacy and then I'd come back for it. So you're one of those persons that is big on advocacy, where you started by doing a podcast where you spoke about it openly in Conversations in Motion,
Yeah,
and you asked me to be a guest on that. And it was a good episode. I think it was a two-part episode. And
yeah.
now you have moved from that to now having your own charity going on where you talk about Warriors Unite. Walk us through what was the main idea behind you just doing all of this for the sickle cell community. Yes, I know you want to talk about it and you want to use your platform, but for those who don't understand the importance of why this is important, just speak for that.
Okay, so it's gonna sound very strange, but originally, even when I did the podcast with you talking about, um, I don't know, we had a whole conversation, an hour long conversation that I had to
Yes.
split in half for Conversation in Motion. But for Warriors Unite, what drove Warriors Unite was really just I got a phone call, and the phone call was just very simple. The person was in the hospital for almost a week and they wanted groceries. And it literally stuck with me. I did get them the groceries, but then I thought about it on a bigger picture and I was saying, this is one person. I'm sure, it's not even a question. I am 100% sure that there are other persons with the disease across the island who they're just not able to provide simple things like food for themselves. They can't pay their own light bill, and it is the reality because not everybody is employed. And if you're not employed, you can't fend for yourself. And so the thought, and this happened during COVID, the thought was pretty simple. I just wanted to give back to persons who were struggling and persons who I knew had the disease and just needed a little help. Um, and it blew up. It I think I just started begging companies. That's really what I did. I made a call and I made a call to one company and it was Sagicor at the time. And Sagicor jumped. And from Sagicor jump at it and they started posting it on their platforms. Companies just started calling me. Seprod called, Grace Foods called. Like people were just on board. And that made me think about the bigger picture. So it really just started with wanting to help persons. But the more I think about sickle cell disease in Jamaica and the state that we're in, I realize the privilege that I have. And I think of myself as privileged because I have only, out of all the complications that sickle cell disease comes with, I have only had a splenic sequestration,
Mm-hmm.
chest sequestration, and a crisis, like crisis every now and again.
You said only like that's
Yes, and I say only because I have had friends who hip replacement, stroke, liver disease, you understand where I'm coming from? Like because
yeah,
sickle cell
yeah, yeah.
disease affects everywhere
Everything. Yeah.
that everywhere that blood flows. So the only place that is safe for us is our hair. And so when I think about the fact that it's funny
No,
to
it's
us,
true. It's
but
yeah, yeah.
but if we think about it in reality, the only place that is safe on any person with sickle cell disease is their hair. And I have met so many persons with the disease who cannot walk, who cannot leave their beds, who are not even able to go into rooms and not be recognized because everybody with sickle cell disease looks like sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
And I realized later that I don't exactly look like everybody else. And I haven't exactly had the experiences of everybody else. And the reason for that is because my parents ensured I had the best health care, the best medical care, the best food, the best. If something wrong with my foot today, I'm on crutches or I'm in a wheelchair. It's not a question. And people don't realize that the more crisis you have is the more it affects your bone because your bones continue to rub.
To
And
get
so
weaker.
exactly. So you imagine a person that's experiencing a crisis, not able to actually buy medication, that damages you in later years to come. And so a lot of sickle cell warriors, I do not like to call them sicklers, a lot of sickle cell carriers or warriors end up walking with a stick very early on. You're 40 and you're walking with a stick. And so when I think about the magnitude of the disease, I want to kind of use a blowhorn and tell everybody about it. I want to scream it from the mountaintops. Hey, people need to listen. And so that's really what it is for me. And wanting to help people. I love to help people. And if it means sending you $100 credit, but just have a soft spot for people. And so that's where it started. And that's the basis of Warriors Unite.
All right, that's good. That's very powerful in terms of you just saying that, you recognize I'm just going to use this word, this your privilege in terms of what your family could have afforded and how the
Yeah.
care that you were able to receive because of, what your family had. But sadly in Jamaica, that is not the case for many persons living
Yeah.
with sickle cell. And I'm wondering if that plays into the role of advocacy because I want us to really just dwell there for another couple of minutes.
It
Persons
definitely
living
does.
with the illness, they shy away from speaking up. They shy away from wanting to talk about it. Um, some of it is because one, when you have sickle cell, you look different because it delays puberty also. So sometimes, if you're one of those persons that is on the smaller side, when your peers are going through puberty and they're getting the growth spurt, and you know they're getting a little bit bigger, and you look shorter, you feel insecure. But not only that, I want to go back down to the role of parenting where sickle cell is concerned, because it seems like many parents, once they hear that the child have sickle cell, in their mind there's
It's a
this
death
thing of it's a
sentence.
death sentence, and there is not enough effort put into the child's life to say, okay, I'm going to do my role to ensure that my child is not left behind. I'm going to follow up with the teacher to say, how did we're going to call our son Matthew, how did Matthew do at school today, did he fall asleep? So it's almost a case where not many parents understand their role in
Yep.
advocacy, and as a result of that, you recognize that one, not many persons know the sickle status. So you end up having more person being born with the disease because you're not hearing about the disease. You're not hearing about how to try and lower the incident rate. So what we have is one sickle cell unit that is supposed to serve the entire island, which on average they're
Caribbean.
seeing about that where in average they're seeing at minimum 3,000 patient for the year. And I'm saying to myself that this cannot be where the real advocacy is taking place. But patients ourselves, we have to take our role and to stand up. So it's almost like when we hear other patients crying out on whether on the social media, in the news, we're so afraid to say, yeah, this had happened to me too when we did go to the ER. So it's almost like when we see things happening in the public space, some of us, we take a step
Shy
back, we
away
keep
from it, yeah.
our mouth closed because we feel like, oh, if I just keep shut, nobody's going to know that I have the illness. And I want to know, Daniela, you never really had a long history in the corporate world. But one of the questions that came tonight is, were you comfortable talking about sickle cell? And we're not just going to talk about it in terms of your career life, but was it something that you're comfortable sharing with peers, people at church, just people around you?
Uh, it wasn't until actually no. If I'm thinking back to majority of my life, I wasn't comfortable talking about it because I never thought I had to. Because as I said, I didn't think I was abnormal. I just thought it was I thought everybody got it, like I
Mm-hmm.
assumed everybody would understand. So when I say I have sickle cell disease, I don't need to explain it to you because I think you should know what it is.
Yeah.
But the older I got is the more I realized that a big part of me getting the question is because people don't know.
Yeah.
And from that place of not knowing, because what we forget is that advocacy is a big part of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot advocate for something if you are not ready to teach somebody about it. And so when I started thinking about advocacy in a broader term, I realized that I'm tired of people not getting it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think you understand, but then when I sit down to say to you I'm in pain, I don't understand why you're asking me where hurts. Because that don't make no sense to me. So it comes from a place of not understanding, but it didn't happen all these years. So it wasn't like I was comfortable talking to my peers. It happened long after. Now I openly talk about it. People know me for talking about it. But I can't say that during high school people even knew I had sickle cell. People just assumed what they assumed. Some persons thought I had kwashiorkor. Some people thought I had
Wow.
whatever. Anything they think, I allowed them to run with it. But no, I don't see sickle cell disease as a death sentence. And I think that is it. You treat it or you respond to it publicly based on how you feel about it.
Yeah.
For me, sickle cell disease is a badge of honor. And it's a badge of honor not because it's the best thing to have, because I wouldn't wish it on my enemy. However, sickle cell disease has allowed me to show people that even though I have it, it is not the end.
Yeah.
And so when I go out and I say I have sickle cell disease, I'm not saying that sickle cell is me. I am saying it is a part of who I am. And me saying it is a part of who I am, I get to introduce you to something. I get to tell you, oh, this is something that I have, and the reason why I have it is this. And I get to go down into the nitty gritty of it. Both my parents have the trait, da da da, and I get to talk about it. But I'm not talking about it in such a morbid way because that is the issue. A lot of people don't want to talk about it because we consistently view the negative side of it. But if we started the conversation from a positive side, then a lot of the times people will be more receptive to listening.
Mm-hmm.
Because the first question I get usually is, I usually think people with sickle cell disease can't do half the way you do. You're running two companies, you still have a full-time job, you're managing talents, but see you outside, you're outsiding, like you're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And how do you do it all with sickle cell disease? And then I get into talking about how one with sickle cell disease can make their life or can maximize their life. So I think it's the outlook that we have. And
And
if we who have the disease take on, because you talk about parents and how parents think it's a death sentence. And I think that's where it is. If parents pass that down to children, then children grow up thinking that they don't deserve to be here or that they are carrying death. And if you think you are carrying death, then your approach to life is gonna be dead. And the way you respond to other people and the way you talk about it will be dead. I did not get that. And so, yes, it's not like my mother was jumping for joy when she found out. But when she sat down and did research and realized that, okay, you can live if you do X, Y, Z, Z, Z. I want to know everything because knowledge is power.
mm-hmm.
The more I know about sickle cell diseases, the more I can spread the word, the more I can prevent certain things. The more I know what triggers my body is the more I can prevent a crisis. The more I know what works for me is the healthier life I can live. And so instead of us thinking about it as this morbid thing, we started thinking about what benefits we can get from how much knowledge we can soak up.
And
And so
mm-hmm.
and so that's really my champion. I want people to know more because again, knowledge is power. Knowledge is knowledge makes you want to do. It is an action. So whilst you're learn you don't just learn in a vacuum. Every time you learn something, you want to teach somebody too because you get so excited about what you've learned. And so I don't know. That's
It,
where I started.
for me, I I didn't I wasn't comfortable talking about it up until probably right before we did the documentary. And it wasn't because people around me didn't know I had sickle cell. I think for me the problem was I didn't know enough people with sickle cell. So while
Mm,
you were talking about it, there were not many persons that could understand when you said there's a tingling that I feel, or the environment is too cold for me, the air feels too dense, or I'm having this type of pain. And as you rightly said, sickle cell is a blood disease that affects everywhere in your body except your hair, because your hair is dead, right? So even as a man, you had to talk about like having priapism. Like you can't talk about priapism with a guy who has never experienced priapism.
yeah.
And for the persons who are listening, I'm going to be a little bit graphic. It is a very painful erection that is non-sexual, that men with sickle cell are prone to. And sometimes if that thing is prolonged, you have to go to the emergency room for them to use needles. They used a butterfly needle to pull the
Yeah.
blood from the genital. So that wasn't easy to navigate. So that was one of the reasons why it was so difficult for me to talk about it. But then one day I was just in amongst friends and I realized that they weren't getting it. And I wanted to tell a story where they could understand it a little bit better so that while they are around me, and if I was to say X is happening, they can say, okay, we need to get you to an emergency room. And right after doing that documentary, I remember, I'm not sure if he's online now, Mr. Kiko Brown, who was part of the crew that helped to create the document. He was like, Bell, me never know you deal with all of this under the quiet. Because living with sickle cell, it's almost a case where if you can't find like a network to be a part of, if you can't find a group of people that understands what you're going through, you can somewhat feel isolated, and it plays
Yeah.
over into you having that morbid mindset to think that one day you're going to die. Because I remember them telling me at 86, you're not going to live very long, right? And
Yeah.
it was just a perception that people have that because you have this illness, you can't live a good life. But I wanted to challenge that narrative to say, I may have bad days. I may have days when I'm not sure why I'm in so much pain because I was drinking the water, I wasn't overdoing it, and I can't understand why I'm having the crisis now. But for me, and we would have said it in the documentary, my outlook on it is that I wanted to tell people that you have the illness doesn't have you.
Yeah.
So you had to decide how you want to live your life, how you want it to rise. And I know for persons who are on the live, they might be saying, well, you guys might be the privileged set where your parents kind of set you a certain way, but mindset also comes into living with sickle cell where you can't stay at home and live with this thing and become insulated. You have to find people that you can talk to. You have to
As
be
well
able.
as, to add to that, because
Mhm,
I don't mean to cut you, but I feel like we also have to stop in instilling in our young people, because just like how you were told you wouldn't live very long,
mhm.
I'm sure all of us were told that at some point in
Yeah,
time. And what you put in is what you're going to get out. Now, if every single sickle cell warrior has been told that, you can understand why people walk around feeling like, oh my God, death is going to come very soon.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that we need to live in a fairy tale world, and I'm not saying that we need to have a fantasy,
Mhm,
but what you feed your spirit is what is going to come out.
mhm.
And so, my mindset cannot be right if everybody around me thinks what I have is next to AIDS. And we have to get real. If we're going to get real about the conversation, we have been made jokes. Like I posted it today on my social media. There have been jokes on movies, on series, with sickle cell being the joke of the day,
Yeah,
because people make fun of what we're talking about. When people compare sickle cell, they don't compare sickle cell to a cancer. They compare sickle cell disease to an AIDS. It's a black man disease, and that's how people talk about it. So if we're going to talk about it, it's how we're talking about it that makes it so negative. And that's why I continue to say my issue is never the talk. My issue is the way we're talking and the rooms we're talking in, because there's more to sickle cell. There's more to life with sickle cell disease. And I think that's where we need to start. And I loved ever since you said it. You said it at the documentary, and I've never forgotten it. I have sickle cell not have me. And that is literally how I live my life. Today may be a bad day, but we all have bad days. We may not look like everybody, but no two people on this planet look alike.
mhm.
We look different, yes. And guess what? Everybody look different, whether they have sickle cell disease or not. We don't grow the same way, but we don't all grow at the same pace. We don't learn at the same pace. So why is it that because I have sickle cell disease, I have to make that clear for everybody? You and I wouldn't grow at the same pace anyway because you're a boy and I'm a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And boys and girls don't grow at the same pace anyway. It has nothing to do with sickle cell. Does sickle cell add another layer? Yes, it does. So I think it's how we teach our children. The moment they find out that they have sickle cell disease, there's this, oh my God, woe is me kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And we need to stop putting that in the atmosphere because it's doing more harm than good.
I want to add two more things to that before we move on because we're not over time. But this is what happened when you're talking about.
This is what happened when me and you kid.
Yeah. One of the things, and I hope you did not experience this. I hope other members of the community did not experience this. But as you rightly say, so we're talking about the disease, and we have to change the viewpoint. And I keep saying, parents, if your child is living with this chronic illness, chances are they are bright. It's not a case where they become incompetent. Please do your best to ensure that they do well in school. Ensure that it just means now that mom, dad, you're just going to have to add an extra layer to your child's development.
Yeah,
Ensure that you talk to the teacher. If it might mean that even if they can't go at the same pace with the rest of the class, put in systems so that they can also learn and to do well in school. And the other part about it is I hate when churches like to label persons with sickle cell as they are cursed. We have to get rid of these things, and I think
or God will heal you.
um yeah, because it rubs the wrong way. It rubs the wrong way. It rubs the wrong way. And I've said it over and over. Um, when you label me as someone who is cursed, and I have to now fight that also mentally, it's not something easy to navigate because we're going to say a good God is now cursing a child that came into the world innocently. So we have to also be able to stand as a community and to say no to these things. It
Yeah,
simply meant that my parents were ignorant because in most cases, many of our parents did not know that they had the trait. And it's after now they had the child now, a first instance, that's when you recognize that they now have a child with sickle cell. Or they have the trait, they have one or two child, the first child didn't show signs because they didn't take there was no blood test done at birth to test for sickle cell. And then now later on when the second child is born, that is when they're saying, but wait, the child now has sickle cell, let us test the other child and things like that. So this is why I'm pushing to say, guys, know your sickle status. And we, the persons who live with sickle cell, we have to say to our friends, know your status. So if they
and
want to
change the
label us, yeah,
narrative.
yeah, if they want to label us, because I remember I was watching the movie Ted and I had to stop watching it because of when there was a joke in it to say that, oh, these are the reject Siemens because it's a sickle cell semen. And I'm like, this is not a joke.
Yeah,
What I live with is not a joke, right?
it's not even that, it's the connotation behind it for me.
Yeah,
And so again, the talk is not the issue. It is the context of the talk. It's making persons feel like sickle cell is a death sentence, and it is not.
it's not.
You can live a healthy life with sickle cell disease. You can live a full filled life with sickle cell disease.
Yeah, I want
It's
to.
going to take a little bit more, but you're going to do that.
Yeah, I want to make a special mention of Andrea All. I believe she's the person behind the Shock Hope
Yes.
Foundation. She's one of those persons who had a daughter living with sickle cell. Unfortunately, she passed on, but she's one of the persons that is advocating for persons living with sickle cell. Though she doesn't live with the disease, she has a trait, but she's one of those persons trying to steer the conversation in a positive manner by education. We cannot change the status quo of this disease without educating the people
Yeah.
around us. We can't wait on the government, and which is why I've said it. every person that lives with sickle cell, you are your first chain of advocacy. So you have to be the first person talking up for yourself. Don't be afraid to have the conversation because we know it. Many of the healthcare professions who said that they went to school to learn about the disease. When you go into the emergency room and say, for instance, they are giving you a viral gene injection and you're looking at them, or better yet, a Voltaren injection, and you're like, this is not going to work, but yet still they're giving it to you, and you say, Mr. Doc, I would prefer you give me some morphine. And this is where they start to tell you that, oh, you're just coming to the hospital for drugs. When that's not the case, it's just a case that you've been living with the illness long enough, you know what works for your body. Nobody wants to be in pain. I mean, I there's no way someone in their logical mind is going to be in pain and then they know that a Panadol doesn't help, and then they're going to go to the shop and buy a Panadol. So why is it that when I come to the hospital and I tell you that this doesn't work, you still want to tell me to take it? And then if I
No,
ask for something stronger, I'm labeled as
let's
a
not
drug
even go
baby.
there. Let us start at me coming to the hospital in the first place.
Yeah,
Because nobody willingly gets up at 3 a.m. in the morning to come to a hospital where it is cold, it smells like medicine, and the bed tough.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't willingly want to
No, if
come.
you get a bed, if you get a bed,
If you get a bed,
yeah.
I don't willingly get up out of my comfortable yard to come to the hospital at 3 a.m. Come on now.
But Daniela, you recognize that you said 3 a.m. It sends a message that if I'm at home at 3 a.m. and I'm unable to bear the pain and I come to a place of care and I'm denying care, it is a level of injustice. And this is
Yeah,
something that I've said to persons at the Ministry of Health that we cannot continue to allow doctors, nurses, and healthcare professions to be telling persons with sickle cell that them not in a that much pain because them don't come into the emergency room screaming. Because I now recognize that when I'm in pain, the more I scream and squirm is the more pain that I'm going to be in. So I'm trying to calm down. I'm trying to say, all right, Noel, breathe. One, two. I have a friend, Rutan. Rutan can tell you, Rutan is one of my close female friends. The last major crisis I had, Rutan drove me to the hospital and I was in the back of her car crying and screaming because of the level of pain that I was in. And when she left, she told me that tears run from her eyes to see a friend like that. So when I leave my house at 3 a.m., it's not for me to come to any emergency room to sit in any wheelchair because there's a lack of bed down by the hospital. And I know there's this thing to say, oh, it's not just for sickle cell patient. Once you're in pain, this is what happens at the hospital. But chronic pain is different from when a person is just feeling acute pain.
yeah.
It is
And I don't. I think
different.
that is. I think that is what a lot of people don't understand. When I leave my house, first of all, from I start feel the tingle, I'm nervous.
Yeah,
And you guys would have heard us talking about tingle. For those who don't have sickle cell disease on this live, the tingle is what we feel before the crisis. Some persons it feel like a cramp in the muscle. It feel literally like it almost feel like you're nervous. Your system almost start feel nervous. I don't know how else to put it in a descriptive form, but that tingle is real. And the moment I start to feel that tingle, I'm gonna do everything in my power to fix it at home. And my parents will tell you, my close friends will tell you that if I start groaning, it means that I am very much in a crisis. I don't scream. There are times when I cry, but when you hear me groan and groan under my breath, it means I am in pain. And a lot of people don't get that. When we come to the hospital, we don't seem like we're kicking and fighting because we don't have the energy for kick and fight,
you're
sis.
tired. Yeah,
I'm already exhausted because what my body is currently going through is exhausting. So when I come to you, I do not expect to, on top of that, have to deal with the social, the physical, and the psychological damage of your words. I don't want to be badgered on top of it.
yeah.
And so when I say the conversations need to happen in different rooms, it's A and okay for me and you to sit down and talk in a Noel. And it's A okay for us to have conversations among ourselves because a community is important. But I want to get up into some doctors' faces, literally and metaphorically, because they think they know. But I went to school as well and I read the same textbooks. There's one chapter and it's not even a full page. It's a half a page on what sickle cell is. Having lived with the disease for 32 years, I can tell you that what is on that page is not sufficient. It is not enough knowledge to encompass what we go through. So when I come to you and I say to you, use this arm because the next hand now will get you a good vein. When
Yeah.
I can tell you how fast the drip need to go, is because I'm used to this. I could be my own doctor and nurse. So do not take lightly how loud your voice can be. And you don't have to be rude about it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've gone into spaces and when I don't talk to the doctor them say, oh, you really know what you're talking about. Yes, I have 32 years worth of
But
university
yeah,
degree in a
yeah, yeah,
sickle cell disease.
yeah, yeah. You're a specialist, and I
I'm
think
a
that's what
specialist
they.
at this time.
Yeah, they don't know. And if Alex is on this live, Alex can be a witness to this statement that I'm about to make. He and I were standing in a room, and I'm just going to be careful how I frame this. And a doctor said to us that they know, they know that the Panadines doesn't work, they know that the Tramadol doesn't work, and that specific doctor is saying, um, they don't know why there is not a lobby for stronger medications for persons living with sickle cell, especially when they come to the emergency room. So when you say a while ago, Daniellia, that the doctors they tend not to know, and based on the fact that they probably read a one chapter, they know. The
Some of them
issue
really don't
is
know, you know. Some of them who know don't come from Jamaica.
that is true. No, but for me, I find that the issue is, and I keep hearing it, and I have to be shutting it down, that there is what's the term I'm looking for? Almost to say that there's an addiction issue with persons with sickle cell, and I keep saying, show me the reports that state, show me the research that proves that you have done your research and you have sufficient evidence to say that persons in Jamaica living with sickle cell are addicted to painkillers. Because unless it's research driven, it's just a theory. And we cannot use hypothesis just to drive the narrative to say that, oh, because one person shows an addiction, that means that the entire community is going to be
But is it
addicted.
really an addiction though? Because Noel, let us also think about chronic in reality.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I started this conversation, I said every day or almost every day I am in pain. And if I'm to function like a normal human being for 365 days, and out of those days, 362 I am in pain, it stands to reason that 362 days I am going to be taking medication. So
Mm.
am I an addict or am I solving a problem that I have? Because that is the issue that they're having. You know, the issue they're having is the frequency by which we need medication. But
Mm-hmm.
we are living with a disease that means I'm in pain most of my life. So how do we fix that? Why is it that Jamaica don't have more pain clinics? Because we as sickle cell patients, we need something that is tailored to us. You don't know your pain threshold because we don't have pain clinics. And the one pain clinic that we have is overpopulated, which is at KPH.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to KPH and you see you're already in pain, because you can't test pain if you're not in a pain. You're in pain, you're sitting down on a bench at KPH for hours because everybody wants the one pain clinic. So when you think about the reason behind this myth of addiction, it's the frequency by which we're taking medication. And what people need to understand is I cannot function in pain. And the longer that pain goes, it's the more intense it gets. So, in order to solve my problem, I am going to try to fix it. And whether that mean a Panadine F, whether that mean I'm gonna go get an injection at the hospital, I have to stop the pain before the pain cripples me.
Yeah,
And if that mean I'm gonna do that every month, it should not shock you because I am living with a disease that gives me pain majority of my life.
yeah,
And the pain when I talk again, it's like taking a hammer and beating somebody with it. I'm not talking about a headache that you feel. I'm not talking about how some persons feel a little cramp when them period come. Cramps for us with sickle cell disease is a whole nother level. So we have to stop thinking about, and I think that's the issue. We think about addiction in a vacuum, but it's not really addiction. It's more the frequency by which we're taking medication that is the problem, and them can't understand.
that is true. So I want to wrap it in about 7 minutes, the conversation.
Yeah,
And I just want to mention something because we are talking about it in the, the Jamaican context. And just how all of these issues that we would have mentioned, how it can affect just your day-to-day life. So you and I, we have our own personal practice where we build or work around us in the sense of you're in entertainment as an executive, entertainment executive, and I do photography. We have the luxury of more free time, but then there are those who they have to subscribe to a regular 9 to 5, not because something is wrong with a 9 to 5, but because they have ambition and they wanted to do, say for instance, accounting, and they became an accountant, etc. I find that in the Jamaican context, when it comes on to pain, there's this labeling, and we would have spoken about it extensively a while ago. But when I travel overseas, and if God forbid I have to go to an emergency room, I feel safe. You know why? I remember I was in New York and I got one of the worst crises. I got a crisis to the point where I needed blood. And I've never had a blood transfusion in my entire life. I needed blood and I was scared. I was mortified because these doctors in the emergency room saying that while they're giving me the pain medication, they recognized that my blood count was really low, and I needed to be transfused. And I remember, Daniellia, that I was on morphine, which is something that I normally take in Jamaica. And the doctor saw that the pain wasn't resolving quickly. And he said, okay, we're going to put you on something higher than the morphine. And I drew myself up in the bed and said, what could be higher than the morphine? Right? And I remember the guy gave me, it's the synthetic name is called diluted, but it's called hydromorphine. Right?
mm,
When he gave it to me,
which is
in
a cancer
about,
drug.
yes, in about a minute I was out cold. And the prescription for that is every 6 hours. When I took it the first 6 hours, I slept and I slept and I slept. Right as I woke up in hour 5, the nurses came in and they said, how is the pain? Are you still feeling pain? And I was feeling a little bit more pain. And they said, all right, we're going to give you a little bit more. And it was quickly resolved. Now, what kept me in the hospital so long was the fact that they needed to find blood. But a crisis that normally lasts for a week, they resolved it in 2 days because they did not deny me painkillers. So what they did was give the painkillers, hydrate me, also ensure that I was eating, give me a space to rest. And that's all we're saying in Jamaica. When we come to the hospital, we're not here for holiday because that's not a hotel.
It's
Sometimes we
not
don't want to go
vacation.
there. It's not vacation. We want to be in and out as quickly as possible. But finally, as we wrap this live, Danilia, you have been paving the way where advocacy is concerned, and we continue to give thanks for the work that you are doing in terms of Warriors United and just utilizing your space to talk about sickle cell. But as we bring this live to a wrap, I just want to give you about 3 to 5 minutes just to talk to the other persons out there who are living with sickle cell, and they might feel a sense like they may never get to live that career life. Just to encourage them, what would you say to them just to encourage them that they can have the career?
I think a lot of the times we're told that we can do something. And I want you to feel or believe that the 1% of energy that you have, because sometimes we don't have the energy. But if you can find the energy within yourself, then you can push. I am just asking you to push a little. Um, Push past how it is that you feel, push past the words that people have spoken over you. And something I want to reiterate tonight is be careful of the things that you allow persons to say over you
Mm-hmm.
and how you speak to yourself. You are worthy of having a job, you are worthy of being alive, you're not any less than anybody else because you have sickle cell disease.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we have sickle cell disease and we cannot change it. It's something that you were born with, but it doesn't have to be what people know you for. It doesn't have to be all people know you for.
Mm-hmm.
You can be something else. You can be a doctor, you can be a teacher. And I've met so many different career goals or persons in careers with sickle cell disease. You can be more. What do you want your life to look like? Write it down and make it plain. Habakkuk 2, verse 2. Also, God never put you upon this earth for just have sickle cell disease. There must be more to life. Because as he said in Jeremiah 29, verse 11, for I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you, plans to give you peace and a future. It never just put you here for have sickle cell disease. And so I always encourage persons to find that 1% strength, find that little glimmer of hope, to find something that you enjoy doing and just do it. Don't take no talk from nobody. Don't allow anybody to speak negatively over you. Word sound power is a thing. Whatever you speak over yourself is whatever you will get from yourself. And be careful how you speak to the image in the mirror. Do not speak negatively to yourself because you are beautiful, you are worthy, and you are deserving of all of the good things then. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And the only thing I'll say on this, guys, as we bring this live to a wrap, is remember, you have sickle cell, it doesn't have you. And when we can live with that mindset, it gives us an opportunity to go out there and make the best of the life that we were given.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not like everybody else's life, but it is still life. It's life nonetheless. And as Daniela rightly said it, you don't have to be known only for sickle cell. There are other persons like us out there that is doing great things while living with sickle cell. So we just want to encourage you, which is why we are doing this live. Just to one, encourage the community. Two, to encourage other persons to continue to advocate, to not just speak amongst the community, but to go out there, to find friends, your neighbor, talk to them, ask them how much they know about sickle cell. This is indeed Sickle Cell Awareness Month. But don't just leave the conversation to, say, for instance, a Professor Knight Madden, a Daniellia White, a Noel Bell. You guys need to participate in the conversation to change the narrative, to go out there and say, look, guys, I can be employed, so that we can lobby for even corporate society and even the private sector, public and private sector, to hire more persons with sickle cell. The change starts with us. And I know we are lobbying for persons to have insurance and to have all of these great things. But guys, it starts with a conversation. It starts with more of us
Yeah.
being willing to say, hey, I don't want to live as a part of the statistics and to live as a part of the stereotype. I want to advocate. I want to speak out. So I want to thank you guys for listening to us tonight. Um, Tonight was very informative. Next week, Thursday, will be a public lecture by our very own Professor Knight Modern. I believe it will be streaming on YouTube. Once I get more information about that, I'll share it in a public space, guys. But as I say, guys, remember, you have sickle cell, it doesn't have you. Thank you guys for listening. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Daniel, I just want to thank you also for spending the last hour and a half with me just to talk about what it is like to live with sickle cell while navigating um, our career life. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I hope you have a crisis free rest of the month. Walk good.
Thank you. Later.
Yeah, one.